Okay, we're back to read a little bit more of the Iliad by Homer. We read about the golden apple. Should have been a review for you, KX, if you were paying attention in KX, Greek mythology class. And we looked at the different players on each side, the Greek side and the Trojan side. Okay. Interesting fact, the part of the world that is now Troy is what we call Turkey, the country of Turkey. And obviously there is a country called Greece. But again, to connect to the story of Guinevere, there was a time when, actually, if you think about it, the countries of the world, before they were unified as one nation, they spent hundreds of years as sort of warring kingdoms, separate kingdoms, and they didn't become unified until later. Okay, here we go. The quarrel. A quarrel is another word for an argument. It's a great QA word, great Quaker Queen word. The quarrel. Like the quarrel that started in the war in the first place, this quarrel was about a woman. The Greeks had captured several Trojans, and Agamemnon had seized a beautiful girl named Chryseis. Her father was a priest of the god Apollo, and he wanted his daughter back. Shocking, right? He came to the Greek ships with a cart full of treasure, determined to ransom her, meaning, take my treasure and give me back my daughter. But Agamemnon refused to take the treasure. He treated the old man rudely and sent him away. Apollo was furious at the insults to his priest. He swooped down on the Greek ships with arrows carrying plague. Plague is sickness or disease. Day and night for 9 days, he shot the arrows at mules and dogs and men. The whole Greek camp was devastated by disease and death. And again, this is the time before they realized that what caused disease and how to treat it. Achilles realized why the plague had hit them. It is your fault, he said to Agamemnon. Let the old priest take his daughter back. Otherwise, we'll have to give up and go home. Agamemnon flew into a rage. You've taken captives too. Why should I give up mine when you hang on to yours? If I send Chryseis back, I want another woman instead. You can give me one of yours. I'll take Briseis. So here's an example, KX, of during wartime, women and children were often, do you think anyone, well, no one really is treated well during a war, but particularly women and children. Why should I suffer? Achilles shouted. My men and I deserve some reward for fighting your war. If we're going to take everything away, we might as well go home. We have no quarrel with the Trojans. I am your king, thundered Agamemnon. You have sworn to obey my orders. That was true, but Achilles refused to back down. Storming off to his hut, he ordered all his men to withdraw from the fighting. So it is true that Agamemnon is in charge of everybody, but you can imagine Achilles, who is the son of a goddess, and who has been told and believes that he is the greatest warrior that the Greeks have, is he really going to want to listen to Agamemnon, right? Agamemnon knew there was only one way to end the plague. He had to give up the old priest's daughter, but he was in command of the Greek army and he couldn't allow Achilles to defy him. So he wants to show everyone that he's still in charge. So he doesn't want to back down. So when he sent Chryseis back to her father, he dispatched 2 of his soldiers to Achilles' hut to fetch Briseis. Briseis is the woman that Achilles has. Briseis didn't want to go with them. When she came out of the hut, she was crying bitterly. But Agamemnon's orders had to be obeyed. The soldiers hustled her away, and Achilles was left alone, staring out to sea. He wept with rage and humiliation. How can Zeus treat me like this? He shouted across the water. Doesn't he care about me? Deep in the ocean, his mother, Thetis, there she is, heard him. She came floating up through the clear blue water and drifted on to the beach. Why so sad? She said, stroking her son with a hand as delicate as mist. Achilles told her bitterly. He was furious, and he wanted revenge. A lot of revenge in these stories, right, KX? Not a lot of breathing, and waiting till you're a little more calm to make decisions, right? Hence, you can imagine why this war lasted for so long. He wanted revenge, whatever it cost other people. I want to see the Greek army on the run, he said. Go and plead with Zeus to help the Trojans. When the Greek army is penned in among these ships, when his soldiers are being slaughtered, maybe Agamemnon will realize how ridiculous he was to lose me and my Myrmidons. So Achilles is willing. He's fighting for the Greeks. He's willing to let Agamemnon suffer some kind of defeat and for other soldiers to get killed just so he can prove his point that he should get his way. What do you think about that, KX? Thetis gazed at him with her eyes full of tears. Here's the full picture. She knew he was fated to die young, remember? When she dipped him in the river Styx. How could she refuse him anything when he had such a short time to live? I'll go straight to Zeus, she said, leaving Achilles on the shore. She flew to Mount Olympus, where the gods watch over the human world. Zeus's feet. She flung herself at Zeus's feet. There he is, and clasped his knees. Look at that. That's more interesting than the words. Mighty father, she said, you know that my dear son Achilles is doomed to die young. Now Agamemnon has robbed and insulted him. Give Achilles his revenge. Let the Trojans win every battle until justice is done. Zeus looked down at her and sighed. The gods were divided over the war in Troy, and Hera, his wife, was a fierce supporter of the Greeks. But Thetis was looking up at him with tears in her lovely eyes, and he couldn't resist her grief. Reluctantly, he nodded. I will do it, he said. First, Zeus sent Agamemnon a false dream, not a real dream, to deceive him. In the dream, Agamemnon saw himself talking to old Nestor, wisest of the Greek kings. Get up, Agamemnon, said the dream Nestor. Now is the time to lead your armies out. If you attack now, you will defeat the Trojans and break down the walls of Troy. Remember this. Agamemnon woke and sat up, shaken by his vivid dream. Calling the other kings together, he told them to prepare for battle. I have had a message from Zeus, he said. We shall win this fight. Is that true, KX? All along the seashore, men began polishing their armor and harnessing the chariot horses. Bronze glittered in the sunlight, and the earth shook with the thunder heroes' feet as the Greeks prepared to attack. See how they all line up? There's a whole organization in how an army advances onto the field. Here's a picture. But everything was quiet and still around Achilles' ships. Achilles was sulking or pouting inside his hut, refusing to forget his quarrel with Agamemnon. And the Myrmidons, so those are Achilles' people, were strolling around idly, watching their horses graze. None of them would be part of the battle. From inside the city, the Trojans saw what the Greeks were doing. At once they prepared to meet them. They marched out through the Scaean gate and formed lines on a mound called Thorn Hill, but they weren't looking forward to the fight. And honestly, Cakes, if you read the whole book, it's pretty much a pattern. Most people don't want to fight. And yet they do it anyway. What do you say about that? And there was still a chance of avoiding a full-scale battle. As the Greek army approached, Paris, here's Paris, stepped out of the Trojan lines. He was dressed in panther skin with his bow in his hand. Although, if you look at this, it looks more like a leopard skin. What do you think, Esther?
Yeah.
Is any Greek brave enough to meet me in single combat? He shouted. If we settle the war like that, hundreds of lives would be saved. Menelaus leaped forward instantly, hungry for the fight. He was eager to kill Paris and win back his wife. Glaring furiously at the Trojans, he began to buckle on his armor. Inside Troy, King Priam, so that's Paris' father, and his counselors were sitting on the city wall high above the Scaean gate. They didn't hear what Paris said, but they saw what was happening, and they leaned together, muttering anxiously. As they were talking, Helen came walking along the ramparts. She was weeping at the sight of the two armies drawn up for battle. How beautiful she is, the old men whispered to one another, but oh, if only she had never come to Troy. King Priam beckoned her over. Tell me, he said, which of these Greek heroes is Agamemnon? Where are Menelaus and Odysseus, Ajax and Diomedes? And which is Achilles? Helen looked down from the wall. Achilles isn't here, she said, but the tall, handsome man is Agamemnon, and the others, one by one, she pointed them out to Priam. So she knows who they all are because she used to live with them, right? So they were her people. The sound of their names made her ache with longing for her home in Sparta, but it was too late to undo what had happened. However sad she was, she could not end the war. Down below, Paris and Menelaus were facing each other with their weapons in their hands. But watching over the scene, the goddess Aphrodite had no intention of letting them fight. She knew that Menelaus was faster and stronger, and she didn't want to see Paris killed. That's kind of the pattern in this story. Paris is not the best fighter, and as Menelaus attacked, she stood beside Paris, ready to protect him. Menelaus grabbed at Paris' helmet, dragging him off his feet and throttling him with the helmet strap. Quickly, Aphrodite broke the strap and sent Menelaus staggering backwards. Then she wrapped Paris in a thick mist and snatched him away from the battlefield. She whisked him into the city and laid him down on his own soft, scented bed. I want to say in the original book, when Aphrodite comes down to the battlefield, she actually gets wounded when she's doing this. And I want to say it was Diomedes who wounds her with an arrow or something, and she's not happy about that. Menelaus was still trying to fight, but when he threw his spear into the mist, it clattered to the ground without hitting anything. Then the mist cleared and Paris had vanished. Menelaus knew that one of the gods had interfered. Now, there was no chance to stop the battle. The Greek chariots surged forward like a great wave of the sea, and the two armies clashed head-on, with spears and arrows, and the killing began. And that brings us to our next chapter, Inside the Walls of Troy.